Today, we're looking at a huge economic shift happening in Nepal. And what's really interesting is that it isn't being driven by the usual suspects. Not foreign aid, not big government policies. No, this transformation is coming from a new generation of leaders who are returning home.
This is an analysis from Alpha Business Media, and in it, we're going to break down this powerful new economic current and the incredible strategic opportunities it's creating.
For years, the whole story around Nepal's economy was about loss. You've heard the term brain drain, right? Well, that narrative is being completely turned on its head. Something new is happening. It's less of a drain and much, much more of a strategic gain.
So who are these people we're talking about? Well, first off, forget any idea of retirees coming home for a quiet life. This is a brand new group of professionals, right in the middle of their careers. We're talking people with 10, maybe 15 years of top-level experience in places like Silicon Valley or London. And here's the real kicker. They aren't just coming back for sentimental reasons. They're returning because they see a massive, untapped economic opportunity.
And that opportunity is built on a really fascinating idea. Let's get into what we're calling the arbitrage advantage. It's all about finding incredible value in things that most people would just write off as, problems or local headaches.
The core idea here is something called inefficiency arbitrage. Now, I know it sounds a little academic, but the concept is actually super simple. These leaders aren't coming in and inventing some brand new sci-fi technology. What they are doing is taking business models and tech that are already proven to work in other markets and applying them to solve very specific local problems. The profit? Well, that comes from the gap between how things are done globally and how they're done locally.
So how does this actually play out? It's basically a three-step process. First, you pinpoint a point of friction. A great example is an economy that relies almost entirely on cash. Step 2, you bring in a solution that's already a no-brainer elsewhere, like integrated digital payment systems. And step 3, you monetize that newfound efficiency. You just created a smoother, faster way of doing things, and you can capture a little bit of value every time someone uses it.
And we're already seeing this model catch fire in a few key areas. In fintech, it's all about disrupting those old-school cash transactions. In the world of business process outsourcing, or BPO, it's not about being the cheapest option anymore. It's about selling world-class efficiency. And in agritech, it's about using data and modern logistics to turn farming into a predictable, highly efficient supply chain. Okay, but here's the twist. If this opportunity is so clear, why isn't every single person who returns a runaway success? Well, that brings us to the biggest challenge they face, something we call the credibility paradox. It's where their single greatest asset can suddenly become their biggest liability.
And here's the crux of it. That incredible global experience, the very thing that lets them spot the opportunity in the first place, can also create a massive blind spot to how things actually work on the ground.
This just lays out the conflict perfectly. Think about it. A leader coming from a place like Silicon Valley lives in a transactional world. A contract is a contract. A deadline is a deadline, period. But they're landing in what's known as a relational economy. Here, trust is the real currency. And a signed contract, that's often just the starting point for a much longer negotiation. Their laser focus on pure efficiency can come across as cold, inflexible, and even disrespectful. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. By pushing for the kind of rigid, by-the-book efficiency they're used to, they can, without even realizing it, send a message that they're outsiders, that they don't really get Nepal. And that alienates the exact local partners they need to survive, let alone succeed. So, if that's the big paradox, how do you solve it? This brings us to the solution, a strategy we call unlearning to win. It's all about creating a brand new hybrid model for getting things done. The key is what's called the unlearning imperative. Now, this isn't about forgetting all those valuable global skills, not at all. It's about consciously taking apart the assumptions that came with them, assumptions about how contracts work, how stable the power grid is, how people get hired. You have to dismantle those assumptions to make room for an approach that blends the best of both worlds. So, what does this unlearning actually look like in the real world? Well, for starters, you have to act more like an anthropologist than a typical executive. You have to learn that one face-to-face meeting over a cup of tea can be way more powerful than 100 emails. You have to understand that the best talent often comes from a trusted personal recommendation, not a job website. And yeah, you have to build backup plans for your backup plans because you just can't take stable infrastructure for granted.
This fintech case study shows the two paths perfectly. The purist approach failed, and it failed because its fancy, fully automated algorithm just couldn't grasp that in this context, a person's creditworthiness is tied to their social reputation, not just numbers on a screen. But the integrationist approach, it was a huge success. They used technology to make things fast, but they kept a human manager in the loop to judge character and local context. They managed to fuse transactional speed with relational wisdom, and that right there is the secret sauce. So, what this whole dynamic is creating is a pretty clear split in the business world. We're really starting to see the emergence of a two-tiered future, one that's defined by two very different kinds of leaders. On one side, you've got the integrationists. These are the ones who master that hybrid model. They're the ones building the next generation of dominant companies, and they're the ones attracting serious money from international investors. Then, on the other side, you have the purists. They're the ones who just can't or won't unlearn. Their businesses either fail completely or they end up as these little isolated bubbles of global best practice that never really have any major impact on the national economy. And this really brings us to the hard truth of the matter. This brain gain isn't some gentle tide that's going to lift all boats. It is a powerful, disruptive, and frankly, ruthlessly meritocratic force. The integrationists are going to outcompete and outmaneuver a lot of the established local players, fundamentally challenging the old way of doing business. So look, there is no question about it. The diaspora dividend is here and it's already reshaping the economy. The only real question left is, who's going to be ready to claim it? Which leaders and which companies will have the vision and the humility to adapt, to unlearn, and to ultimately win?